What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 29 deadline. So I'm going to go through the latest press conference information, answer some of your questions, and take a quick look at my team as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Some of you might have noticed things look a little bit different for this video. I'm actually away at the moment with the family, so they're off enjoying themselves. I've snuck off to get this video recorded because it's double game week 29, the biggest double game week of the season. I didn't want to miss this video or the live stream tomorrow. So normal content happening for game week 29 at least. Hopefully it sounds similar because this microphone is the same one as I use at home. There's just not as much soundproofing, so it might be a little bit more echoey, but hopefully for a couple of videos it's at least bearable, and at least we can still chat about all the big topics going into game week 29. So we're going to start off with Haaland. Obviously Pep Guardiola had his press conference today, and he said, we'll see today, which we all knew he was going to say, right? We knew that he'd be training later, see how he feels. And that's basically what he said. We'll see today. At the end, the doctors and the player will decide how he feels. I spoke with him. He feels good. We will see. Life is risk in these stages. We have to take it, right? So that makes it sound like they're going to take the risk, but that could just be the way that Pep Guardiola speaks, right? I don't think it's a guarantee that he plays, but all along the international break, I was saying that I'd be very shocked if he didn't play. And I still think that is the case. So I guess the question is, what do you do if you're an owner, and what difference is there if you're bench boosting or not? I think if the rest of your team looks great and you've got Haaland on your bench and you're intending to bench boost in game week 29, I think I would just keep him, because straight away after you've got Southampton away and Leicester at home, and it might be that they risk him for Liverpool and then give him a bit of a rest for Southampton because there's Champions League games coming up, and obviously they got a tough knockout round against Bayern Munich. But I just think he will play because every time he's been fit, that is what has happened, right? I think all throughout the season we've been wondering, when is that rest going to come for the Champions League, etc., and it hasn't happened so far. When he's been able to play, he has, and obviously he's come off early. He's come off in like the 65th minute before, and maybe that will happen again against Liverpool. But I'm feeling fairly confident that Pep will want him in that team for that Liverpool game. I think if it was the other way around, Southampton away this week, then Liverpool at home in game week 30, maybe he wouldn't be risked, but I feel like he's going to play. And ultimately, even if there is a genuine problem there and they're not quite sure, I don't think it's enough to kind of sell him at this point, because he's a player that you're going to want straight back. I know a lot of us sold him in game week 28, but that was a little bit different, right? We were getting a player for the blank game week who also had a double in 29 to then get Haaland back in game week 30. I just don't think it's worth the transfer. So if the rest of your team is looking great and you're intending to bench boost and Haaland is your only doubt, I would probably just still go ahead with it and just hope that he plays. If you're really unsure about him, you're not confident that he's going to play, then you could sell him, but I would want a plan to get him back pretty quickly, because in game week 30 he's probably the best captain. I think if we look on the FPL page, the only other player you might want to think about, I guess, is kind of Man United against Everton. So someone like Rashford, who we're going to talk about a little bit later, you could captain him instead of Haaland. Kane's got Brighton at home if you're keeping him. I don't think many people are going to go for Liverpool or Arsenal players in game week 30 because they're playing against each other. So there are other options. If you sold Haaland this week, you could still then go and captain Rashford in 30. If you've got Kane in 31, he's got Bournemouth at home. So there are other options. But for most people, as soon as he's fit, they're going to be too afraid to go without him. So if you've got him, I'd probably just keep hold of him. And I think for anyone that's already sold him, you just sit back, relax, enjoy the chaos and hope that he doesn't start. But I think unfortunately for us, he probably will. One other thing to say, I'm just going to double check here. It is the early kickoff tomorrow. So there is a chance we will get early team news. So if you're in a position where you can wait, try and wait till as late as possible tomorrow for the 11 a.m. UK deadline before you make any moves. Obviously, if you're not in that position, you'll have to decide before. But just something worth knowing, it is the first game of game week 29. So I just want to quickly talk about Brighton because they had quite a few players that travelled during the international break. So I think Matoma was playing in Japan, McAllister was in Argentina, and Ecuador went all the way to Australia to play 2 friendlies. So Estepinian and Caicedo would have played in those games. Now I know from an FPL point of view we're not looking to buy Caicedo, but obviously if he missed out, that could be detrimental to Brighton overall. But I don't think we need to be too worried given what De Zerbi said in the press conference. So he said, we don't have any concerns on fatigue. fatigue, which is a good thing. But tomorrow will be a difficult game due to the opponent and for our players who have been away. So there might be a slight contradiction there, because if there's no concerns on fatigue, why is it going to be difficult, especially for those that have been away? Because presumably it's more difficult because they've, in some cases, had to travel long distances and are perhaps slightly fatigued. I don't know, but I think the fact that he didn't name check any specific players is probably a good thing, right? At least he didn't from what I saw from the notes that came out from the press conference. If you've seen something different, let me know in the comments below. But it wasn't like Estepinian or Caicedo or Matoma or anyone like that was specifically mentioned. So that looks pretty good. They're also in a really good position this season, right? They're still in the FA Cup. They've got a genuine shot at a European place as well. I think we're going to see a pretty full strength side. So it's going to be March, McAllister and Matoma behind a forward, probably Evan Ferguson. But as I've already discussed this week, I don't think we can massively rely on his minutes going forward. I think as a 4.6 million forward, he's a pretty good option. But compared to the three best Brighton players, I don't think he's in that kind of conversation. I think he's probably outside of the three midfielders, so March, Matoma, McAllister, Estepinian, Dunk, and maybe even Steele, or obviously there's some risk there as well. Then Evan Ferguson is probably your next pick. And then in defence, Lewis Dunk always plays, and he hasn't had to travel. And they don't really have an out-and-out left-back that can go and play instead of Estepinian, so hopefully he'll be okay. There's some slight worries there, because in the FA Cup game, he got hooked at half-time, and when De Zerbi was asked about that, he said because he expected him to play better. So that's not necessarily a good sign. And Colwill came on and played in that left-back position, but he's really a left centre-back rather than a left-back. So I'm hoping Estepinian's okay, and essentially any Brighton players you own are probably not worth a transfer. If you've got any of Dunk, Estepinian, March, Matoma, McAllister, you probably just keep hold of them. I think if I was buying one of their defenders this week, I would probably play it safe with Dunk, but there's probably a subconscious feeling there. But because I own Estepinian, I'm more worried than maybe people that don't own him are, that he won't start. Because I think you get that in FPL, right? When you own a player, you're way more concerned about whether they're going to start. So maybe that some of that is playing on my kind of decision to say Dunk. But either way, whichever one you go for is a pretty good option. Obviously, the fixtures in the double, Brentford at home, Bournemouth away, 3 more double game weeks coming for the rest of the season. They look pretty good. So no concerns. Although the players that have been away might find it more difficult, I think they're probably going to be okay. So I know Arsenal players have been a huge topic of conversation over the international break, whether or not we should sell them before Leeds at home. And to be honest, I don't really want to get back into that conversation in this video, because I feel like I've covered it enough in most of the content I've done this week. But I thought this was interesting from Arteta on Saliba. He said, "I am very hopeful that he will play again this season. William is progressing. Unfortunately, he still has some discomfort. He is not going to be fit for the Leeds game." And the fact that he says, "I'm hopeful that he will play again this season," that tells me that he's going to be out for a good number of weeks unless something drastically changes. Now, part of obviously the conversation about selling Arsenal players has been Odegaard or Saka or someone like that to kind of Maddison or Fernandes or whoever it might be. But also there's been a lot of chat about selling a defender. Now, most people who are looking at this own Zinchenko or Gabriel, and they're probably looking to go to Shaw or Chilwell. I'm definitely looking at that too. Now, obviously, whether or not you're going to free hit in game week 32 plays a part in the decision, because if you're not, Arsenal have got Leeds at home, Liverpool away, West Ham away and Southampton at home. And I'd kind of be okay owning a defender for that run, especially when they play for Arsenal, right? Because the Arsenal defence has been decent. But if you are free hitting in game week 32 and you can forget about that Southampton fixture and get an Arsenal player back in on your free hit, then suddenly, and I can't show you here because it doesn't show up for some reason the way I've got it set up, after Leeds it's Liverpool away, which I'm not convinced Arsenal keep a clean sheet in that game. West Ham away, and to be fair, West Ham haven't been great in attack, but it's still another away game to add to the list coming up. Then it's Man City away and Chelsea at home. So I was already thinking I kind of want to do Gabriel to Shaw because those fixtures don't look great. And now Saliba's not going to be in the team either. Now, I don't want to overplay it, right? I think sometimes when a team loses a player and then someone like Rob Holding comes in, people act as though it's the end of the world for Arsenal defence and they're definitely going to ship loads of goals. But I think we can all agree that going from Saliba to Holding is a bit of a downgrade, and that might cause issues for that defence. I don't think they suddenly go from, a good chance of a clean sheet to just keeping none for the rest of the season or until Saliba's back, but I do think it makes them slightly worse. So the reason that I'm talking about what Arteta said is if you were on the fence about whether or not to sell your Arsenal player and you're kind of looking for an excuse, or like I've said at the top, confirmation bias, this might be what you needed to make that move. So I think it's worthwhile if you've got a free hit that you're going to use in game week 32. Obviously, if you've got the free hit and you want to use it in another week, that is perfectly fine as well. But for those of you that are on that strategy, I think it looks pretty good to sell an Arsenal defender this week, and you just got to hope that the player you bring in at least matches them and obviously hopefully outscores them this week. But if they don't, in game week 30, I think that's another tough week for an Arsenal clean sheet, even if Saliba was fit. So having Shaw for Everton at home, or Chilwell, who has got, I think it's Brighton away, or is it Wolves away? I can't remember. Yeah, Wolves away in game week 30. That is surely better than the Arsenal defender. So I think they're better for 29 and better for 30. And if Luke Shaw, for example, keeps playing, there's loads of extra fixtures and good single game weeks to come. So yeah, for anyone that's on the fence, maybe this is the thing that makes you go through with the transfer. But obviously you've still got to decide, because the fixtures coming up, at least in the next 4, aren't too bad for Arsenal at all. So Rashford had been yellow flagged for pretty much all of the international break. He definitely would have been in the England squad had he been fit. So we've all been waiting to see what Ten Hag said in his press conference. And this is what he said when asked whether Rashford would be available for Newcastle away. He said, "I could hope he trained. He had to do some treatment and individual training. Today he joined the group. I have a good hope that he's available." Yeah, so he hasn't outright said he's definitely fit, he's definitely going to play, he's definitely going to be available. But it does sound pretty encouraging. I know a lot of people don't think this was ever an injury to begin with. They just thought that Rashford needed a rest, and this was a good way to get it without having to go play for England. Obviously, that may or may not be true. We're never going to know. But it is a slightly different situation to Haaland, because Haaland went away with the Norway squad, then they found the groin issue, and then he was sent back to Man City as a precaution. Rashford never went away with England at all this international break. So I've said all along, I'd be very surprised if he doesn't play against Newcastle. Can Man United go and win that game without him? It's possible, but obviously he's been one of Man United's best players this season. So Ten Hag's going to do everything he can to get him on the pitch. The only thing I would say, because everyone who owns him is definitely keeping him, there is no reason to sell him. Everton at home in game week 30 is a good fixture. If he's fit for that and Haaland isn't, he might even be one of the best captains. And obviously Nottingham Forest away in 31 isn't a bad fixture either. So no one should be selling him. The only question is, should you captain him? Now, as it stands, and who knows, right? It's a big double game week. I might change my mind on the deadline stream tomorrow. But right now, I'm still going to captain Rashford, because I think he's the best captain if fit and available and going to get good minutes. And I think all those things are going to happen. If you are someone that is really close between Rashford and Maddison, or Rashford and McAllister, whoever it is, and you're looking for a reason to go one way or another, perhaps you use this as a reason to go for the other player that's not Rashford, because Ten Hag hasn't come out and specifically said, yes, he's going to play, or yes, he's definitely fit, right? That's the only thing I can think of here. But for anyone that owns him, you're definitely keeping him. There's no reason not to do that. It's just whether or not you're going to captain him. So I think there's lots of us out there that own Sven Botman. Obviously, he's a cheap nailed on defender for Newcastle. Double game week this week, double game week to come later on down the line as well, probably in game week 36. But like Rashford, he's been flagged during the international break as well. So this is what Eddie Howe said. Sven suffered a nasty bout of food poisoning. So I think there was a few players that were sent home from the Netherlands squad. Botman was one of them. I don't think he was alone in the Netherlands camp, so he left early to get himself back up to speed. He's trained with us since he's returned, so he should be fine. I cannot see any reason whatsoever to sell him if you own him. It's not like he's part of the captaincy conversation or anything like that, and he only costs like 4.5 million. There aren't a huge amount of defenders that are better for that money or less. You've got like Mings with a double game week this week and some pretty good single game weeks coming up. But for most of us, the defenders in our team that are around that 4.5 million price point, we're not playing most weeks anyway. So for me, Botman is going to play in the double game week as part of my bench boost, but then I'm probably going to bench him for 30 and 31 if I can. And obviously game week 32, I've spoken a lot about how I'm going to free hit. So he's really just sat on the bench to be called upon if I need him, because he is nailed on and he is cheap, and for that double game week later on. But otherwise, I just don't really need him. So if you're a Botman owner, I think you definitely keep him. Right? I just don't see any point in using a transfer on it. Even a free one, I'm not convinced it's worth it. For anyone that doesn't own him that's looking to buy, I guess you could put a few doubts on him because he was suffering, like Eddie Howe said, from food poisoning. But if he's been training, I just can't see what the issue is with playing the next match. So he should be fine. If you own him, just keep him, either play him, put him on your bench, whatever it is. I can't see many reasons to sell. All right, let's answer some of your questions. So with Iheanacho, should we hold or sell for a -4 if we are bench boosting in game week 29? Now, this is quite a tricky one because I do rate Iheanacho as a player. I think he's a great FPL option when he gets regular minutes. And obviously, Leicester do have a really good double game week. But you just cannot trust Brendan Rodgers, as last game week shown, right? Against Brentford away, he came on for 1 minute off the bench, even though he'd started the previous 6 before that. So there is no way that I can guarantee you that he's going to start both games in game week 29. And I can't even guarantee you that he's going to start one. But what I would say is, given that he started 6 of the last 7, I think it would be really unlucky if he doesn't start either game. And I think both games are good enough that it doesn't really matter which one he gets. And obviously there is then an outside chance that he would either start the second game or get minutes off the bench, hopefully more than just one. So in most cases, I would probably keep him and not take the -4 and just hope for the best. Because if he gets one start, you might be better off just not having spent those four points. The only reason I would look to sell him is if there's a striker you want to bring in that you think is great for 29, guaranteed minutes, that is also going to maybe let you do another move later on, so perhaps they're cheaper like Solanke or someone like that, or that you just want to keep for the next 4 to 6 game weeks. If you're going to bring someone in this week, just because you're worried about Iheanacho not starting one or both of the games, but then that forward you need to get rid of soon, I just don't think that's worth it. The player that kind of comes to mind that could be worth selling him for, because he is 6.1 million, so it's a close enough in price, although it is a bit more money, is possibly Isak, because even when Wilson is fit and starting, I think Isak is going to continue to start as well. They've got a double game week of Man United at home and West Ham away. On paper, it's not great, but I think he can definitely get returns in either or both of those games. Brentford away, Villa away. They play in game week 32 against Spurs. Everton away, Southampton at home. It's a good fixture run, and there's another double to come later on. He's the kind of player that you could bring in and then keep for the foreseeable, possibly even until the end of the season, unless a better forward becomes available for that price. So maybe for someone like Isak, or even someone more expensive, if you're going to keep them for, like I said, the next 4 to 6 weeks. But if it's someone you're going to want to move on again, I would probably just not take the -4 and hope that he starts at least one and pray that he starts both. So lots of people probably thinking about this. Is a triple up on Man United and Brighton essential with the number of double game weeks that they have? And the answer is no, they're not essential. They can be very useful to a lot of people's FPL squads. And for a lot of you, it might be worth considering increasing the number of players you have from these two teams, right? Because for me, again, I've spoken about it a lot. I'm going to free hit in game week 32, so it doesn't matter that they're going to blank. They've got some good single game week fixtures for the most part, good amount of double game weeks. I can just get them in my team and then not have to worry about them unless they get injured, suspended or dropped or something like that. But that might not be the case for everyone, and I think it's worth remembering that in game week 29 they are not the only teams that double. There's plenty of other players out there as well. So if you were looking at, let's say you've got 2 Brighton players, right, and you've got about 8.5 million to spend, and you want a player over the next couple of weeks. Well, I would say that Leicester's double is just as good as Brighton, so you could look at someone like Maddison, but also Maddison has Bournemouth at home in game week 30, whereas Brighton go and play, I think it's Spurs away. I'm just going to double check which order. Yeah, Spurs away and then Chelsea away. Now, to be fair, Maddison has Man City in game week 31, which is not great, but for someone that's not got their free hit or doesn't want to play it in game week 32, Leicester also have, I'm going to say, Wolves at home that week. So Maddison would have a good double game week, Bournemouth at home, Man City away, and then Wolves at home. That might be better in the short term than getting another Brighton midfielder in for Spurs away, Chelsea away, and a blank game week. So it's all going to depend on your team. What I would say is, from kind of game weeks 33, 34 onwards, I think the value of those players, as long as they keep playing, because obviously Man United might still be in the Europa League, there might be some rotation, the value of those players goes up, because for Brighton, for example, they've got Nottingham Forest away in 33, a double in 34, Everton at home in 35. They're probably going to double in 36 and 37, and then it's Aston Villa away last day of the season. That's a lot of extra fixtures and a lot of good fixtures thrown in for really good value players. They then become, I'm not going to say essential, but they become much more valuable than they are right now, just because so many other teams are also doubling. And it's a similar situation with Man United players. That's not quite the same because in game week 30 they've got Everton and Nottingham Forest away in 31. So those are quite good single game week fixtures. But again, for someone that's not free hitting, you probably don't want to triple up on Man United because you're going to be in a bit of a mess when you get to game week 32. But after that, from 34, it's a double. It's West Ham away. It's Wolves at home. Then it's probably another double in game week 37. So there's never that many things or players in FPL that are ever essential. And I think that's the case for Man United and Brighton players specifically from game week 29, but they are definitely very useful. Okay, so could I free hit in game week 34 if I have Steele, 2 Brighton players and Rashford only that blank in game week 32? So obviously if you've only got those 4 players from those teams, then you can bench them all and you can still potentially get out a full playing 11. So the answer is yes, you can free hit whenever works best for your team. I know when you watch my videos I mention free hit in game week 32 quite a lot. That's partially because we're getting quite close to 32 and a lot of people are on that strategy, but obviously I'm on that strategy as well, so it's always in the back of my mind to kind of keep mentioning. But there's plenty of really good FPL managers out there that are going to free hit in game week 34 or possibly even later as well. I think the way things are set up, if you're not that keen on going for more Man United players this week because you want to keep your Arsenal players or whatever it is, then you may well get to game week 32 and not have too many issues. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily looking to get Liverpool players in right now, for example, but if you look at their upcoming fixtures, obviously I'm not saying get them in for this week, but from 31 it's Leeds away. They play in game week 32 against Nottingham Forest at home, so there's no issue if you don't want to free hit that week to start bringing in the likes of Salah or Trent or whoever it is, because that is a good fixture. Then it's West Ham away, then they've got their double in game week 34. Now obviously if you're free hitting in 34, I guess it doesn't matter so much, but the single game weeks after that are pretty good as well. So there are plenty of ways to play this season, and there's plenty of people that are going to free hit in 34. I already spoke about the advantages to doing that earlier this week, in that you're going to get to game week 34, you're going to have the most amount of information possible. If there's injuries to key players from certain teams, you can get different players in for 1 week only. So as an example, let's say we get to game week 34 and Haaland has been fit before that, but suddenly he's injured. Well, lots of us are going to have a big decision of what to do with him. Do we transfer him out and then get someone else back in? Whereas you can free hit, keep hold of him, but maybe for game week 34 only, perhaps you put someone like Alvarez in. So there's advantages both ways. For me, I look at my team, I'm going to talk about it in a minute. I don't see enough to change my free hit strategy. I think I like the idea of getting more double game week players in this week. I like the fact that I can get someone like Fernandes and Shaw in and just keep them for the rest of the season, theoretically at least. And the easy way to get around that is to free hit in game week 32. So that is what I'm doing. But free hit 34 on paper looks like a really good week to use it, especially if it fits in with the rest of your kind of transfer strategy and stuff like that. So I just wanted to quickly talk about my team. I know I did the team selection video yesterday, and to be honest, not a huge amount has changed from that, but it's quite a big game week, right? The biggest double game week of the season. And a lot of the moves we make this week are going to dictate our chip strategy and future transfer strategy as well. So I'm just going to quickly run through it again. Now, at the time of recording, the yellow flags haven't been taken off Rashford and Botman. I think they probably will when FPL get around to that. But like I've said already, I'm not really too concerned about either. And as it stands, I'm probably going to keep Rashford as my captain. If I do get concerns about his minutes going into the deadline stream tomorrow for whatever reason, I'm probably just going to switch it to a Brighton player because the fixtures are so good, right? They've got the same game against Brentford at home, but they get to play Bournemouth away instead of Newcastle away. And some people might say, well, if that's the case, they've got the better fixtures, why aren't you going for one of them anyway? But I think Rashford is just a better FPL option. His goal threat is higher than all of March, Matoma and McAllister. So that's why I'm on him. And the transfers, I think, are going to be Saka to Fernandes and Gabriel to Luke Shaw. And I know sometimes we can get tunnel vision on our transfers and we basically get blinkers, right? We can't see other moves that might be better. And I'm conscious that that is happening now, but I cannot see why I wouldn't make those moves. It's similar to last week where I really wanted to captain Saka, but as we got closer to the deadline, I saw more and more people going for Kane, and that made me question, have I missed something? Should I be looking to go for Kane instead? And obviously in the end we got lucky with Saka, etc. But it's the same here. Am I missing something? I know Saka is great. The 18 points last week didn't change that fact. I already knew he was brilliant. I already knew that he was the best Arsenal option, but he is my easiest way to get Fernandes in whilst also doing Tony to Haaland next week. Now, obviously, from the press conference stuff with Pep Guardiola, it's not even guaranteed that Haaland plays against Liverpool, and therefore he might be a doubt for Southampton as well. But if he is fit, I'm going to want him back. So with the money that I've got in the bank, I think that has to be the moves, right? Saka out for Fernandes. And yes, I've got a lot of money in the bank. I could do Odegaard instead. But if I do that, I don't have enough cash to get Haaland back. And like I've said with Arsenal defenders, I think I kind of already wanted to do it anyway, but with Saliba out, it just helps the decision, right? Even if that is just confirming my own bias to make that move, I'm happy enough with that. I know I'm not a perfect FPL manager. I can be swayed by these things, and I think I'd be pretty happy with that. My bench boost would then be Odegaard, obviously against Leeds at home, and I don't mind keeping him, right? Again, Saka is a better FPL option, but Odegaard's underlying numbers for the season have been pretty good. The one thing he doesn't have is penalties, so I'm not too concerned about having him over Saka. So it'd be him, Kane, Raya, and then Botman would go to the bench because I would play Luke Shaw ahead of him. And I think with Odegaard in general, I would probably play him against Liverpool because my two Brighton midfielders have got Spurs away. So I'd probably play one of them plus Odegaard against Liverpool. I'd probably play him against West Ham. But in game week 33, I will either sell him or I will bench him, and then he'll definitely go in game week 34 either way. So whether or not I sell Odegaard or Saka, they have to go. Whichever one I keep has to go by game week 34 because I want Mo Salah at that point, unless injuries and stuff have changed the plan. That is currently what I'm thinking. So for me, the Leeds game is really the biggest worry because I think it's always scarier the week you sell players because if they haul, it feels real bad. Whereas if they don't and they haul the game after that, you don't feel so annoyed about it. So I am worried about Leeds. But after that, could Liverpool find something to keep the amount of goals down against Arsenal? Possibly. An away games against West Ham. I think I've just got to take the risk. It's not that I think Arsenal are bad or anything like that. They're brilliant, great value, etc. Top of the league, probably going to win it. But I just think if I'm ever going to sell them in FPL, this is the point. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to stick to the original plan. I'm just going to sell Saka instead of Odegaard. Haaland will come in next week. In game week 31, I will probably do Raya to Ederson. He doesn't play for Man United. He plays for Man City. He still doesn't play for Man United. He plays for Man City, which doesn't sound ideal. But I might play him in 31, and then I've got him for the double in 34, and they'll also have another double in 37. So that is where I stand with my team. I'm definitely going to bench boost. I can't see any reason to delay it. I don't want to be making moves over the next few weeks, having to think about what my bench looks like. I'm going to keep Estepinian and hope that he plays against Brentford. I think Chilwell might be an issue around Champions League over the next couple of weeks, but this week he's fine. And I just think my team looks pretty good. And I think taking the -4 is probably a good compromise. I've looked at -8s that include selling Odegaard and Kane, but I don't really want to have to get rid of Kane and one of my Arsenal players. And the -12 involves getting Salah. I just think it's a little bit too early for me to make that move when I can probably do it for free or a -4 instead later on. So yeah, I'm probably going to captain Rashford. I'm probably going to sell Saka, and I'm just going to hope that I get a big green arrow. If you've enjoyed that video, please do give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done already. Thank you for kind of bearing with me for this video. Hopefully it sounds okay. I know it looks a bit different, but I think it's all about the sound, and hopefully, yeah, it's been all right. We'll do it all again for the deadline stream. We're hopefully going to be in exactly the same location, getting that done for you, as long as the internet speed is good, which it looks like it is. So yeah, this is the last video for this week. I'll catch you tomorrow for the deadline stream. I'll see you then.